As a kid, I had this question in my mind that stayed with me for a long time. I was embarrassed to ask people this because it kind of sounded stupid to me at the time. The question being, is the color red I see same as the red you see? What if I'm actually seeing blue and I happen to be taught to call it red? What then? And this thought opened a door to a plethora of other panic-inducing questions. Does chicken taste the same to me as it does to others? Does chocolate taste the same to others as it does to me? Yes, also a lot of food-related thinking was happening at the time. And well, some time passed and I kind of moved on from this. And as I grew up, I realized that a lot of people had the same questions back then. There are countless videos and articles that try to explain what could be, but there are no definite answers. The thought that we could probably be all alone in our minds with our own perceptions is haunting. Can we ever be objective in understanding of the universe around us, or are we just using ways that are way too human for a world that is fundamentally unhuman? In our search for objectivity, mathematics looks to be our best contender. At the core of all disciplines, there is math. It doesn't muddle itself with biases and prejudices. It is grounded in logic and reality. The mathematical truth will exist regardless of whether you were here to witness it or not. 2 plus 2 will always be 4, and the square of the hypotenuse of a right-angled triangle is always equal to the sum of the square of the other two sides. Of course, there is subjectivity in naming stuff. You can call it the Willy-Schmeely theorem, but the fact will remain, no matter what part of the world or even what year the discovery was made. Meet Euclid, the father of geometry. He lived an estimate over 2000 years ago in Alexandria, Egypt. He is responsible for Euclidean geometry as we know it today, and in this Euclidean system, there are a few basic rules, such as 2 parallel lines can never meet, and the angles of a triangle always add up to 180 degrees. These basic rules were of course revolutionary for the time. There is not much known about Euclid and his life, but he believed nature to be a physical manifestation of mathematics. That mathematics is out there and we just have to go and get it, implying that there is infinite knowledge waiting to be discovered. A few thousand years go by, and a few mathematicians independently, Carl Friedrich, Nikolai Lobachevsky, Jonas Bolyai, established the grounds for non-Euclidean geometry. This was again revolutionary for the time. Where Euclidean geometry is used to deal with flat surfaces, non-Euclidean geometry deals with non-flat surfaces, where parallel lines can meet and the angles of a triangle might not add up to 180 degrees. Henri Poincaré, another contributor in the field of non-Euclidean geometry, expressed that the existence of non-Euclidean geometry suggests that math is not something to be discovered, but it is something which is invented by humans. Both Euclidean and non-Euclidean geometry are useful depending on the context, but both systems are built on different sets of rules, and we choose the one that best fits the situation. Just like a game, you choose to play the card which you see fit. And in mathematics, instead of choosing a card, you start with an axiom. What is an axiom? A statement which is accepted to be true with no proof is known as an axiom. An axiom? More like my ex-wife. Like 2 dots can be used to make a line. You don't need a proof for this, you just know it to be true. So mathematicians pick an axiom to start with and invent whole systems around that axiom. If you change the axiom, it will lead to a different system. Both systems will be internally consistent but contradictory when you put them side to side, hence proving that there is no single universal truth. So was it really here before us, or are we just picking up abstract patterns as we see it? And don't fucking tell me all the high school calculus was just some exercise to engage my brain. And don't be judging my handwriting, man, I see you. The debate over whether math is invented or discovered has been going on for centuries, with no clear answer in sight. And some mathematicians and philosophers believe that the answer isn't as simple as invented or discovered. They argue that we cannot see the world directly for what it is. We have just evolved to understand it in ways that helps us function in it. The mathematical operations get so abstract and difficult to understand that we rely on metaphors to grasp them. Then with these metaphors, we understand the logical consequences of those operations onto the real world. Like numbers on a line. Numbers don't inherently exist on a line, they are just numbers, but we conceptualize it as such as it helps us understand them through the metaphor of moving forward and backward on a line. And these metaphors come together to form a branch of mathematics, and those branches of metaphors come together to form a newer branch. And so it goes. Why are we so good at creating these metaphors? Well, because our brains have evolved such cognitive mechanisms to categorize and understand the physical world around us. To put it more simply, it's just because we have evolved to see it. We see it in newborn babies. They possess the understanding of basic arithmetics, what's less and what's more. This cognitive mechanism has evolved so beautifully well that we were inventing groundbreaking mathematics long ago without even knowing it. Leonhard Euler, one of the most prolific mathematicians of his time, and who also became blind at a young age, formulated this equation after he went blind. This formula was initially a surprising and abstract result in pure mathematics, combining seemingly unrelated mathematical concepts with no relation to the real world. Later on, Euler's formula was found to be profoundly useful in describing the behavior of oscillating systems such as light waves and sound waves. Taking another example from way before in the late 1700s, knot theory is the study of how loops and strings can be arranged and how they can be classified based on their twists and entanglements. This could not be of much use until the late 20th century when we wanted to understand the behavior of DNA. And these are by no means isolated incidents but one from a plethora. Even the non-Euclidean work, which is considered to be invented by Friedrich Lobachevsky and Bolyai, later saw its use in describing Einstein's general theory of relativity. You look deeply into a discovery, chances are quite high that its roots trace back to an invention built on metaphors. And those metaphors built upon past discoveries observed in the physical world. And so the cycle goes. The purpose of those metaphors or inventions wouldn't always be clear at the time, but we do get there, eventually. So it does seem we are moving in the right direction. With our axioms and our rulebooks, we keep building on foundations and branches until we finally see the universe for what it truly is. It'll show us its gods and reveal what's it made of. And the truth we'll see this time wouldn't just be the reflections of our own limitations, but we'll see all the things we had seen before, but couldn't really see. Right? Behold David Hilbert, one of the most revered mathematicians still. Hilbert was a formalist. He worked rigorously on creating axioms. His contribution in functional analysis laid the groundwork for most of the work done in these fields, all with his sick hat on his head. You could sense in him a slight distaste towards physicists. He once said physics was too important to be left to the physicist when he met a young Einstein. Einstein at the time wanted help in formulating the equations for general relativity. He had just published his theory in 1915. Years of his life's work finally out there. Hilbert said to Einstein that helping him would just take too much of his time and that he will solve this on his own. Matter of fact, I could probably finish it in a few days, unlike you. So kiss my hat, fizzy boy. A central goal of Hilbert's formalism was to show that a formal mathematical system can be both consistent, that is, the system shouldn't contradict itself by proving A is equal to B and A is not equal to B. And the system should be complete, meaning it can always provide a proof for a true statement. And he spent years trying to establish that by setting up finite set of axioms, and he believed all of mathematics could be derived from these axioms. He saw himself completing mathematics, but if someone somehow were to prove that mathematics wasn't complete and consistent, then that would mean that there is a fundamental flaw in our champion of objectivity. It would mean math is limited, and there was a bigger fish amongst the crowd. Much bigger than Hilbert. And that fish was doing exactly that, a 23-year-old Kurt Gödel. A few months after attending Hilbert's conferences, Gödel published his incompleteness theorem. Gödel's work was exceptional, and it was a huge blow to Hilbert. In order to truly understand his work, one would require a PhD in math. But today, I would like to keep it pretty simple. Gödel went through the trouble of using numbers to replace mathematical equations and statements. Every symbol was assigned its own unique value. Then you take a statement, swap each symbol for its value, and assign each number as an exponent to a corresponding prime. Multiply all the prime powers together and now you've got yourself a big-ass number that uniquely represents that statement. That's its Gödel number. This was an extensive task. Every Gödel number disguised a statement. Then Gödel used this system to encode a statement which forever changed how we look at math. A statement which referred back to itself. And Gödel made the numbers say, I am not provable. Now, in order for mathematics to be complete, it has to prove if the statement is either true or false. If it is true, then there is a statement which math can't prove. But if it's false, then math proves a statement that says it's unprovable. The proof proves its own unprovability. You are stuck. If it still hasn't hit you yet, let's take another example. Imagine math as a giant cosmic machine, flawless and eternal, made to solve every problem. You can write your question on a slip of paper and feed it in, and it gives an answer of either true or false. You feel a little clever, and you write, this machine will never say B is true. If the machine says B is true, then it's wrong. It should never say B is true. If the machine says B is false, then it's saying it will say B is true, and it shouldn't do that either. The machine is cornered and stuck with a contradiction. This is what Godel did, a self-referential problem in mathematics which no one had ever seen before. He made math talk about itself, and it fell apart. Hilbert was torn. His life's purpose, his only dream, was shattered. Hilbert couldn't just make more axioms for these unprovable equations and statements, because doing so would just make up more unprovable statements and equations. Is it true? Is it false? Not long after, Godel published his second theorem, which proved that math is not only incomplete, but also inconsistent, explaining that a formal mathematical system cannot prove its own consistency by using only the rules and axioms that are a part of that system, meaning you can't use a dictionary itself to check whether the definitions in the dictionary are correct or not. You cannot truly see the entire painting if you are a part of the frame. You cannot truly understand the universe if you are a part of the universe. In our pursuit to understand the unhuman, the indifferent, we are dulled with the realization that our tools, our thoughts, are bound in humanity. Our wildest theories just stitched together from metaphors born in flesh. But what Godel showed in math, our brains mirror in biology. On one level, our brains are just inanimate molecules carrying out chemical processes. But from these processes emerges something entirely different: life and consciousness. Just like Godel's number, which disguise statements that refer back to themselves, our brain's chemical processes give rise to something that circles back and reflects upon itself. The neurons fire, the patterns connect and form a storm of electrical impulses. And from these electrical impulses emerges a being who contemplates upon his own inanimatedness. This mesh of matter and electrical impulses begins to perceive. That perception allows him to interpret the chaos from the outside world and funnel it into something he can understand. Light hits his eyes, a neuron fires, a pattern awakens, and eventually the patterns settle into meaning. He begins to name what he sees, to feel what he names. A face, a memory, a dream. And in doing so, he learns to ignore the microscopic mess, his dividing cells, the blood flowing in his veins, and the silent thrum of his being. He jumps instead to something broader, something simpler, something that feels like understanding. He no longer is a piece of borrowed carbon and hydrogen and nitrogen. He thinks, he feels, he is. As if it all isn't just the electrical impulses in him, as if he has any choosing in the matter of how he thinks or however he feels. He values his life simply because he has never known or been anything else. With time, his impression of an I strengthens, and his assumption of the unhuman around him feels as real as stone. And the world outside blows into beliefs, simple but sacred. Ideas become flags, flags become walls, and soon he's ready to defend what he cannot explain. You might find him bowing his head. You might see him on his knees. You might offer a cloth, a prayer, a candle, each time searching for an answer to a question unhuman. What happens after he dies? It terrifies him, this nothingness he cannot grasp. He was never made to understand it. His mind is a loop, not a void. Somewhere along the lines, the borrowed carbon and nitrogen and hydrogen interact again and form those neurons and patterns again until there is fear, until there is hope, until there is a him. And those fearing, hoping, believing questions the assumptions and tries to understand the world for what it truly is, all the while being a part of it and the world which he himself is.